All right, we got games coming up here from the SEC. Before we get to that, if you want to get free plays daily from Jim Feist on a recorded message or sent via your text, you can go right to jimwins.com, or you can just call his free pick phone, 1-855-737-5367. Okay, big showdown in the SEC on Saturday. Ole Miss playing at Florida. A couple of undefeated teams here. The Dog is 5-0 ATS when they meet, as is the road team. And here's a game where Ole Miss was supposed to be real good this season, and they are, but Florida, really nobody knew what to expect. They had a new coach coming in. They had a bad offense last season. Florida, here they are 4-0. Jim McElwain is the new coach. When he was at Colorado State, he was very innovative on offense. The thing is, before the season started, he did mention that he thought his new Gator team was very short on playmakers. With that said, he's turned to freshman quarterback Will Greer and gotten good production. 6 touchdowns, 3 picks, 725 yards. Wide receiver DeMarcus Robinson has been pretty good, but the standout guy Saturday was the freshman Antonio Callaway, and that amazing win over Tennessee, 28-27. They got outgained. In fact, they allowed 254 yards rushing. Hard to believe this Florida defense was gouged that much, but they hung on to win that game. So, Sean, here's a team that's 4-1 ATS now in the swamp. Can they keep it going?
You know, this is a major game, I think, for Mississippi, and they're ranked number 3, I think, so far this year. First of all, it's a conference game for these two teams, but they are not in the same division. Ole Miss is in the West Division of the SEC. Florida's in the East. Florida ranked number 25, Ole Miss number 3. These teams have not played, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to say about 7 years. It's been a while.
I think it was 2008, I think.
Or something like that, and I don't remember who won. I have to check with somebody on that. Anyway, currently, Mississippi 4-0 straight up, and they are covering numbers 3-1. Their average line in their games, how about this? Average line in their game is 22.1 as a favorite, point per game. They win by 35.5 points a game. They're coming off a 27-16 ho-hum win as a home favorite at 26 versus Vanderbilt last week. That's their only non-cover. But that's after a huge upset of Alabama as a 9-point road dog. That was 2 weeks ago. Ole Miss could run the table here if they can get by this game. They have tough games versus Texas A&M coming up in LSU, but both of those games are at home. They're winnable, and they'll probably be favored, short number at least, against A&M in both of them. Here's Florida, ranked 25th. They're in the east side of that conference. They're 4-0, 3-1 straight up. The average line in their games is 14.4 as a favorite. But Florida plays, this is rough for them. After this, Florida plays their next 3 games on the road, and they got to play at Missouri, at LSU, and Georgia. Tough road to hoe here. Ole Miss, they got national title aspirations here, which is why this line is thinking so high. I didn't think it'd come this high. I thought this line would be more like 5.5 or 6, but it came 7, went up to 7.5. So they're taking the favorite here. Boy, Florida just 1-4 straight up and against the number. The last 5 is a home dog, so it's not like this is a great roll for them. And they failed to cover these games by 5.5 points a game. But you got to go with the pedigree here, and if I had to, I'd lay the 7.5, and hope with this thing. I think Mississippi clearly the better, and maybe in the second half they just wear them down. But I would, if I had to, I would take Ole Miss in this game.
Well, I could see something like that because the win they had over Vandy wasn't that impressive. They were only 3 of 13 on third down, but the one you mentioned 2 weeks ago against Bama, that was an eye-opener.
A little flat after that. So
yeah, exactly. In the game against Bama, they put up 433 yards against Alabama, which has been a great defense for a while. And the quarterback, Chad Calley, was just sensational. 341 yards against Bama, 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. He is very much a missing piece / difference maker for what is a very talented defense. So, Jeff, who do you see the edge here, the Florida defense or this Ole Miss offense?
I'll go with the Ole Miss offense. I just checked in 2008. Ole Miss went to Florida as a 22-point dog and won 31-30.
Won the game.
That was pretty interesting.
It's always you, Jeff. Just nail it right.
He's got everything
the
like
book
that.
right.
I'm always prepared.
But I want credit for the fact that I asked you.
Okay, I'll give you that.
Thank you.
Obviously, Ole Miss had a letdown on Saturday after that big win over Alabama. They won 27-16, but they easily could have been a blowout. They had to set up with 3 field goal attempts. They were averaging 64 points a game going into that contest. Running back Jalen Walton had 133 yards, 21 carries, and Ole Miss had 11 penalties. Another sign that they just weren't up for this game. They still have a powerful and experienced offense. The quarterback, Chad Kelly, is completing 62% of his passes, 10 TDs. They have 5 receivers with at least 10 catches this season. Florida's banged up on defense. They have a lot of guys questionable for this game. They escaped at that win on Saturday against Tennessee, 28-27. Florida's converted 5. They've converted 5 out of 5 fourth downs in that game, 10 of 10 on the season. I don't know how long they can keep that up. Quarterback Will Greer was 23 of 42 for 283 yards and 2 TDs in that game. Florida's, they beat East Carolina. They had to win at Kentucky. That's not too bad, but still, this Ole Miss team should be ready this week as opposed to last week, and they have this dominant offense here. And Florida is pretty shaky on defense now, especially with the injuries. I'll go with Ole Miss, John.
Well, I'll make it a threesome, so to speak. I'm not sold on this Florida offense either. I mean, look at the games. They beat New Mexico State. They beat East Carolina 31-24. The Kentucky game was a 14-9 final. An impressive offensive performance. So even though they got the win, and then the Tennessee game by 1 point, in which they got outgained, giving up 419 yards, 254 rushing. So while we're talking about a Florida team that's 4-0, you look at a couple of breaks here and there. They could be 2-2. They could be 1-3, and we wouldn't be talking about this being an undefeated matchup here. They were fortunate to beat Tennessee last week. And there's no ifs or buts about how good this Ole Miss team is. This defense is so talented. They were number 1 in the nation last year in points allowed, a ton of talent. They will be expected to be top 10 this year, and they are loaded. And then you got quarterback Kelly, who's just been terrific, a senior coming in, playing so well. So I'm going to look at 2 plays here. I think the total's high, and I can't see the Florida offense scoring a lot, so I'll lean toward the under with Ole Miss 10-2 under the total against the SEC. But also, I think Ole Miss has too many weapons on both sides of the ball, maybe a 24-10 win in this one. All right, let's get to another SEC game. You got the big one on Saturday, Alabama against Georgia. Georgia opened a 2.5-point favorite. The total's been bet down from 54 to 52. We got about 53% of the early money here coming in, a little bit on Bama early. You got a Bama team that's 3-1. They haven't played in a while, although Georgia's 4-1 against the spread at Bama. Bama's got a terrific defense, and the offense has been boosted by senior quarterback Jake Coker, 8 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. However, they come off that game against Ole Miss. Well, actually, they beat Monroe, which was an unimpressive game. In fact, you were mentioning how the Big Chalk are not covering. Well, that game against Monroe last week, Alabama opened 41 and was bet down to 37. And
still didn't get there.
Still no, and the early money movement was right as they won the game 34-0. The big one though was the
can't even cover a line when they shut the team out. I mean,
that's can't even tease that puppy down. The game against Ole Miss, they lost. They allowed 433 yards, and they got chewed up by Kelly. So there's some question marks about this Bama team. They do like the month of October, 12-4 against the spread. On the other hand, they're 2-5 ATS on the road. So, Sean, this is another big test for Nick Saban's team. Which one's going to show up?
You know, this is what's that coach for Georgia, Mark Rick, Reich, or however he's been there for years. This maybe is a real step-up game for these guys. I mean, Georgia. First of all, these teams haven't met since the SEC title game in 2012, and even that was a barn burner. Georgia lost the game 32-28, but they were a 7.5-point dog. I think that's the game that's playing up in Atlanta each year. But Georgia 8-1 straight up in regular season games versus the SEC West the last 9 times they've had to play them. And the same thing here. You know, Georgia can run the table. If they can win this game here, they play Florida, Jacksonville in that cocktail party game, but they'll be a short favorite on that. That game is not until October the 31st. It's at a neutral site there. Right now, Georgia's at 4-0 straight up, but just 1-2 against the number. The average line in their games, 29.2. Wow, because of that big, number that they played. But they haven't played anybody. Did not cover against Vandy. They did cover against South Carolina. This Alabama thing, the one thing I noticed about that, they're 3-1 straight up. But they're 1-3 against a number, and they're on an 0-3 spread run. And I think the problem with Alabama is, for the first time, Jeff, in a long, long time, they really don't have a passer. Yeah. They've always had a quarterback that could throw the football, and they've usually had some pretty good ones. Now their deal is they got to run the football, which means Georgia knows what they have to do, and they have to play D. And you have to beat them in a low-scoring game. This is a conference game. It's not a divisional game. Alabama already has a loss to Ole Miss. It's a tight call, but I think, and it's a short number. You said it was 2.5 up to 2. I've got it the other way. The number's 2.5. I see the total back up to 54, at least before I came in here. So I think they're going to balance that. I would be surprised if the line got to 3, but I would be very shocked if it got over that, and they might even do this like 2.5 minus the $1.20 thing that they do sometimes when I don't have to deal with that 3. I think maybe it's the overdue thing or something, but Rick knows what he has to win. You don't have to worry too much about the Alabama passing game. He's not the worst quarterback in the world, but when you look at guys like McCarron and some of the Alabama quarterbacks that they've had going all the way back to the snake, Alabama has always had a decent passer, but not this year. You have to stop, what's that running back's name, Chubb?
Nick Chubb.
Nick Chubb. It's pretty much it. I think there's one other kid. But that's what you have to do, and you got to play good defense. I see a low-scoring game here. I think Georgia wins this probably by 10 late.
All right, that last time they played that SEC title game, the quarterback for Georgia was Matt Stafford, and he lost a close game. When was the last time that happened?
Well, he ain't looking too good last night, I can tell you that, in that Denver game. So,
Was he like 3-30 now against
Something like
a
that.
good team?
Plus, it wasn't a home, so he knew he was going to.
yeah.
Well, Georgia's really no stranger to winning. They've claimed at least a share of the Eastern Division title in 2 of the last 4 years. The big question mark coming in was the quarterback, because they're really loaded on offense. They had Nick Chubb, who had over 1,500 yards rushing last year, but they've kind of struck the jackpot early on with this junior quarterback in Bryce Ramsey. 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, 75% completions. He's been terrific, and the defense is loaded from top to bottom. So, Jeff, I wonder about this Georgia team. They've got the great defense and everything else. Is this their year?
Yeah, everything looks good for Georgia. It's the only thing is, this is going to be their first real big test. They played Louisiana Monroe, Vanderbilt, mediocre South Carolina team, and then Southern. So that's the only thing that's holding me back here from making a big play on Georgia. It's the first time, as you mentioned, the first time they played since that big game, the 2012 SEC championship game. Nick Chubb had just been dominant, averaging nearly 150 yards per game, 8.4 yards per carry. Quarterback situations, Grayson Lambert's cleaning 76% of his passes. Bryce Ramsey, 11 of 14 for 125 yards in that win over Southern. Bama held Louisiana Monroe to just 92 yards total offense and winning 34-0. Jay Coker was okay. He was 17 of 31, but his receivers dropped several passes, so that hurt his numbers a little bit.
Maybe look ahead or something.
Yeah, Derrick Henry was recovering from an illness. He only had 52 yards and 13 carries. One of those classic showdowns. You have a great offense here against not as well. It's a great defense of Alabama, but maybe not as great as compared to the past years for the Tide. So it's always hard to go against Nick Saban, but this time I'm going to do it. I'll take Georgia, John.
All right, and I think the Georgia defense could be the difference. I really like this, but I'm going to take a look, too, at the total, because there's way too many offensive weapons on both sides of the line. First of all, with Alabama, offensive coordinator Lane Kiffin, I like what he's done since he got there last year. It's more of a mix-it-up offense, pass-heavy, more than what Saban likes to do, which is to pound the rock more the percentage of the time. So they've been more open on offense since he got there. And then Georgia has terrific balance on offense with Chubb, and this quarterback's been great. Bama defense, as you mentioned, boy, that was an eye-opener, getting mauled by the Ole Miss team. That's part of a 5-2 run over the total. Meanwhile, Georgia may surprise a lot of people. The Bulldogs are on a 22-10 run over the total, so I'm going to take this game to be higher scoring than the odds makers think. Georgia-Bama over the total.
When was the last time Lane Kiffin wasn't threatening to be fired? At least they're not threatening to fire him this time.
It seems every year that
Every
is
year
a
they're always threatening to fire him.
topic in the news. All right, let's get to some best bets on the card for the weekend. Sean, what do you got?
Believe it or not, I'm going to stick with this Georgia thing. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think they got enough horses to get it done probably by 10. And I think the total is right where it should be. I see 30, maybe 30 to 20, 30 to 22, that kind of a game.
All right, Jeff, best bet, and tell everybody about those high roller selections that won with the Buffalo Bills on Sunday.
My best bet's going to be UCLA over that underachieving Arizona State team. I just can't. That team is just right now an embarrassment compared to what they were supposed to be doing this season. So UCLA has lost. They have all these major injuries, including Miles Jack now, the best defensive player, and they still went out and blew out Arizona. So I'll take UCLA to cover that big number on Saturday. And once again, you're going to get 7 days for $19, college and NFL action. Had a 4-1 week in the NFL. I'm on a 29-12 run with my blockbusters. Just call the number on your screen. You get 7 days for $19, college and NFL. Just
You got change of a 20?
yeah. Just ask for LVSS.
Okay.
I'm not sure what happened to either one of those Arizona schools. What, did they not have alarm bells for last Saturday's game?
John, I can't believe you haven't talked about the Bears. 10 possessions, 10 punts. I mean,
that's right.
I can't believe you haven't done that.
I haven't, because I was the one calling the offensive plays for the Bears. I'm kind of embarrassed about
embarrassment
that.
about that.
They had a bad day. All right, Jim Feist, 2-0 with those high rollers last weekend. He's 3-1, 75% with these games of the year in football. Early line is available now. It's his non-conference game of the year going Sunday. The one he hit last Sunday was the blowout game of the year. That was the Seattle Seahawks, and they did. It's $99 online. You want to get it for just $19 with a bonus high roller. Call 1-855-846-7426, or if you want free plays to your text every day, just go to jimwins.com. All right, that'll do it for the college football version of ProLine. Good luck with the games, everyone, and we'll see you next week.